Hi all, our notable game today is another game of Rashid Nezhmetdinov. He was playing against someone called Lev Aronin. That sounds a bit like Lev Aronin, doesn't it? But it's actually Lev Aronin. So this is back in 1953, the 13th RSFSR Championship. Okay, so Aronin was awarded the the International Master title in 1950. That's 3 years before this game. Although his performances would indicate apparently that he was on equal footing with his Grandmaster colleagues. In Leningrad, 1956, he tied first with 11.5 out of 19, along with Boris Spassky, Tolish, Klaman, Kazin. He was selected for the Soviet team for the first European Team Championship in Vienna, 1957. So, pretty good player. And he scored 1.5 out of 3 on the second reserve board. The Soviets won team gold, and in an utterly dominant performance captured individual gold medals on each of the top 9 boards. Aronin won the prestigious Moscow Championship in 1965. His style tended to be positional in nature, with tactics arising naturally out of position rather than being forced. And he was one of the foremost authorities on the King's Indian defence during the 1940s. In this game, actually, we see a reverse kind of King's Indian, the King's Indian attack being played by Näcmetdinov. So we see after c5, we see knight f3, d6, and g3. Yes, King's Indian attack set up. Knight c6, bishop g2. Now, Lev Aronin plays a very logical move, bishop g4. This is often used to weaken white on the dark squares after h3, but he doesn't immediately take the bishop here. He plays actually bishop h5, d3, e6, knight c3, we have bishop e7, white castled here, bishop f6, and now we see knight e2, so possibly white is going to follow up with knight f4 now, or alternatively, now that the c-pawn has been unblocked, maybe white is also considering g4 and then knight f4. Black here gave up the light square bishop. We see knight ge7, but you notice the dark square play is good for black here at the moment. It seems to be quite good anyway. Promising. Black played now d5. And we have e takes d5, knight takes d5, leaving white with a seemingly passive position. Although white's got the two bishops, it looks a little bit passive. Black seems to dominate the d4 square, frontal pressure, and you can imagine quite an easy plan for black when he continues, maybe after castling, just put the rooks on c8 and d8, and it seems just a very comfortable position. We see knight f4 challenging the knight on d5, knight takes, bishop takes. Now queen d7 is played, and here a very energetic idea from white. Although it seems completely out of the question to move the c-pawn, this to be weak on c-pawn file, this is exactly what white does. c3, not fearing the weakness of the d3 pawn. After castles, now queen a4, yes, no passive queen move for Näcmetdinov here. So what is going on here? Well, it is pinning the knight. There's no knight d4. We just take the queen. But the pawn here, you might be asking, black played this. If black takes on d3, this isn't good, because rook a d1, where does the queen go? Here. Then we have rook d2, forcing sequence. g4. Rook d7, and you can see that the queen's quite awkward on h4, and this position is very pleasant for white. So by giving up d3, this is extremely good light square pressure. Rook on the 7th, white stands better, has got full compensation from an engine point of view for the pawn. So yeah, the pawn doesn't seem as though it should be taken here. So white still has the bishop pair and seems to have resolved his apparently passive position through c3 and queen a4. Rook a c8 is played, are now protecting the pawn. Rook f d8. It still seems as though black's position looks entirely harmonious here for dark square pressure on d4. Rook f e1. We see b6. Queen a6. So using the weakened light squares. And maybe black gets a bit carried away with his position here. Possibly, by the way, Queen a6 is, maybe black could be playing at some point, maybe for a5. But anyway, we see that Queen a6. It looks as though it's out of the way here, and maybe because it looks out of the way on the queen side, black decided to lash out with g5 because the queen's like completely away from the king. So these weaknesses, you might think they're theoretical. The queen over there on a6. We see the bishop going right back here to c1, and this could be useful, this protection on b2 later. Now, another idea of b6, it does support here knight a5, supported by the b6 pawn, and the queen's holding a7. So that's another, probably the most significant idea of b6 actually. Now we see white playing an energetic idea based on the weaknesses here. White plays d4 and is able with d4 to get the queen back, maybe to around the opponent's king. So it was only a temporary adventure over here on the queen side. C takes d4. White is not obliged to take back. White plays queen e2 in this position. So temporarily a pawn down. The thing is, with queen h5, it'll probably be quite dangerous to play something like e5 in this position. So this is getting to be quite intense. This pawn sack is a very dangerous one just to get back to expose and exploit these weaknesses. Let's just check this particular position. So there's Näcmetdinov, a pawn down here. The engine has it as good for white. Yeah, if e5, queen h5, what does black do about g5? You know, if you play something like this, then we're running into bishop e4. So yeah, it's difficult. Black decides to play h6. We have queen h5, hitting h6, king g7, and yeah, it just looks natural to be a pawn down here, but with great pressure on black structure. h4, yeah, try and rip open these lines. Queen e7. Now after queen e7, white does now take on d4. Yeah, there's counterweight pressure on g5. Black looks to be in a bad spot here, because actually d5 now, the queen looks awkward on e7 because of d5. We see knight c4. Now d5 wasn't played straight away. Perhaps Näcmetdinov was concerned about knight takes b2. He kicks the knight first and now plays d5, and he's really putting the pressure on the light squares. That light square bishop is such a beautiful piece. It's one of the openings, the King's Indian attack, where you don't need to know tons of theory, but from a positional perspective, that thin-shadowed bishop is often such a gorgeous piece, and it is here. White just stands much better now. Black's got weaknesses. White's not even a pawn down. Things have gone a bit pear-shaped for black. We see black trying to keep things locked down with e5, but now Näcmetdinov lashes out himself with f4, trying to break open the lines. G takes, and here not G takes. I think that runs into bishop h4. Let's just make sure of that. In this position, pardon me, if G takes, there might actually be, no, I don't think that actually works. Bishop takes h4 very well. No, there's too much pressure there. No, but black has better here. it seems, yeah, black's best is this, but even so, white's with the advantage here apparently. So in fact, you know, g takes f4 is a powerful move, but what was played is actually stronger. Bishop takes f4, hitting h6 immediately using that pin. This is actually stronger. Rook h8, and now a beautiful crunching move in this position. A real crushing move is played here. Can you guess what Näcmetdinov plays in this position? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video starting from now. White's play. Okay. Rook takes e5. Yes, this is really powerful. It turns out d6 is a big problem. If bishop takes, then actually queen takes e5 check is a dangerous battery to win d6, and whatever happens d6, it's dropping off. So yeah, black sidesteps that, and we have to move rook e2 now, which protects the second rank against rook c2. White stands beautifully in this position here. These fractured pawns are a very, very bad sign of an impending disaster when you're playing Näcmetdinov. And in fact, now with black under pressure, rook h7 is played, and it carries a weakness of the last move. It's not protecting the rook on c8. So guess what white can play here, which kind of immediately wins the game now after this little mistake, well, fatal mistake. Rook h7. White plays, if I give you 5 seconds here, okay, bishop takes d6. Yeah, bishop takes d6. Yes, like in yesterday's notable game, if queen, well, black resigned here. If queen takes, there's check. Black's losing a bit on c8. It looks kind of, it's a side effect. The queen side is a side effect of going for the king. You don't have to go for a mating attack. You can just win material on the queen side. It's a very powerful winning side effect of king side attacks, that you end up with some lethal check winning material. This was a difficult position here. The pawns are fractured. Rook h7, of course, doesn't help black's cause. But apparently this is nearly +3. This position. I mean, this doesn't make it worse. It makes it. I mean, this makes it +7. But the best move apparently is here, and takes. This is apparently like +3. d6 with d7 on the cards. So say this d7. What is black doing here? In fact, this is getting to be very, very dangerous proportions. This pawn here, rook e8, and now bishop h3. Pardon me, bishop h3 is on the cards. 94 takes, winning a piece. But what does black actually do here to bishop h3? Say, you know, black plays a non-move here. Rook takes, yeah, black's overloaded. And where else does the knight go in this position? it's just the bishops are absolutely dominating this knight on f5 here. Yeah, if the knight doesn't move, we just take on f5 and play bishop c7. Yeah, the passed pawn. Yeah, black has got major issues in this position, it seems. Before this blunder, it isn't just in a vacuum. You might consider black blunders in vacuums. It's not. The famous Nigel Short quotation I made note of. Yeah, blunders are rarely in a vacuum. Black has severe difficulties here. Say he plays this. We've shown a bit of queen f5 takes. Now if take here, then we're tied down to h6. Now here again we've got ideas of bishop h3. This passed pawn looks to be an impending issue. Here white's controlling e2. This position is just very, very comfortable for black. Black's almost like running out of useful moves. If black that neglects h6 and was given as the top move, but what is white actually threatening? Rook c6 again. The passed pawn's going to be liberated. If we run through like this, and that passed pawn is going to be a menace, or the king side, both. Either like this. It's just a horrible position. White's bishop pair and the passed pawn. It's showing in these variations that they're major assets, which are very dangerous, have very dangerous tactical implications. Black's having difficulty holding on to his material, basically, and position in general. So yeah, the blunder made it very, very clear cut. That was end of game in the actual game continuation. But yeah, you know, quite an attractive game. A simple looking game, but then again, it's something, you know, it's not one of his mega brilliant, you know, immortal games. It's kind of a meat and potatoes game, but it shows he knows how to use the king's engine attack, get the bishop pair. He knows how to switch his queen once a weakness has been created to the king side, and he senses exactly the right time for the positional, you know, the calculated positional exchange sack, which is not really a sack, it's just winning material. Yeah, Black's completely busted with forcing sequences. One fatal weakness in the last move, and there's a forcing sequence available to win the rook on c8. Who would have dreamt the rook on c8 was a tactical liability? But you know, these things happen when you're under pressure. Black was concerned about the passed pawn and, you know, the rampant bishops, not just on this protecting the pawn, but maybe the bishop coming to h3 later, or using this diagonal later. So yeah, an interesting game. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.